Gifted. I'm going to be talking about the movie Gifted. And it's a very interesting movie. I'm going to tie it all in, I promise you. It's a very interesting movie. This movie is about a family, the Adlers. And there's some other characters in there, but the main characters are Frank, Evelyn, Mary, Diane, which is Mary's mother, and then there's another lady named Roberta Taylor. And in this movie, Mary, who is the young lady, is a child genius, a mathematician. And she comes from a lineage of mathematicians. Her grandmother was a mathematician, her mother was a mathematician. And she's finding out, I think she's like 6, that she's basically a child genius when it comes to math. And when all of this starts coming out, her grandmother, which is Evelyn, shows up. And they go through the movie and different things happen and they begin to fight for custody. The grandmother and her uncle Frank begin to fight for custody over her. And come to find out, her mother had committed suicide when Mary was a small child. So Frank took her, but the grandmother wants her because she is discovered that the math genius has rolled over, and the grandmother is basically going to get another opportunity to raise another prodigy. So it goes into a bunch of places. But what was very interesting was there was a problem that the mother was working on that Evelyn, the grandmother, thought never was finished, was never complete. And the story is not real, but these problems are real problems. In the year 2000, there were 7 problems released to the public for anybody to find out. And these problems are deemed to be unsolvable. And in 2003, there was a Russian mathematician who solved one of the problems. And anybody who solved these problems they grant you $1 million. So if anybody feels genius and you want to look up these problems, there are 6 yet remaining, 17 years later. If you want to give them a try, I encourage you to go ahead for it. Because you get $1 million, and not only that, you're deemed a genius and you go in history books, and then you get paid because people are going to want you to come and lecture and, explain how you got to the problem. Now, just to let you know, these problems are not problems that takes 2 pieces of paper. These problems, to effectively work them out, you will probably use a whole notebook. And you have to go back and do old math and go way back, hundreds of years, to different theories and bring it up to current day. And as any of you know, some things kind of change, different theories, different methods. So you have to be fluent in math. So I encourage any of you who feel able, please get your $1 million plus and do these problems. But anyhow, so needless to say, it is the Navier-Stokes equation, which has, I can't tell you, I've never been a mathematician. I stopped in high school at pre-cal, and that is the father. And some people are like, pre-cal, that's good. Okay, all right, I haven't applied it since, so I can't tell you anything. So those are the problems, and it has something to do with the function of the fluidity of matter or something like that. So again, if it sparks your interest, please tackle these equations. But I wanted to talk to you about 2 Timothy. The reason why it stuck out so much to me, because so many times in life, we discover that there are lineages. We come from different places, and it's very important. Your upbringing is very, very, very important. And I know it's bad to say that sometimes we look at people and we be like, you just like the rest of your family. Your mama was a thief, you a thief. Your granddaddy was a loan shark, you hustling. We go through all these kinds of things. Now, there are positive things. Your granddaddy was a doctor, your daddy's a doctor, you're a doctor. So sometimes our upbringing, not sometimes, just about all the time, our upbringing encourages the different things and the different ways in life that we choose. And Paul was talking to Timothy, and he was telling him that he was encouraged because he knew where his faith came from. And he knew that his grandmother was a strong woman in the Lord, and his mother was a strong woman in faith, and that he also exuded these same characteristics that he get his lineage. And sometimes you have to understand that don't get this. I made a quote earlier this week, and I said, the truth can be a distraction, but don't live for the lie. Again, the truth can be a distraction, but don't live for the lie. And what I mean by that is, the truth is you come from good people. You come from a good place. You were raised great, but life is hard. You on your way to being a doctor, but there was a few sidetracks but you believe the sidetracks. You believe that you're never gonna make it, it's never gonna happen, it's not gonna, you're not gonna complete the mission. Now the problem is, you believe and you know what God told you to do, and you know what direction God has you going, but you are starting to believe all the naysayers or all the situations that are happening in life. Now, the problem is you have to learn how to get past that. Because if you live for the lie, you start to throw fits. If you live for the lie, you start to have pity parties and you linger in that. And before you know it, you have accepted that situation. You have accepted that low place that was never intended for you to stay. Yes, it was meant for you to experience it, and yes, the design of the Lord is for you to experience it. But the part that you misunderstood was experience. The part you misunderstood was not stay. Don't linger. Don't make this a place of habit. Or don't make this a place of rest or a home. And so many times in life, we get comfortable. Why? Because the fight is hard. If it wasn't hard, we would all be millionaires right now looking at each other. Everybody would have exuberant health. Everybody will feel good all the time. But the point is, you have to get past that. And what is interesting is, it did not say, you didn't go through the whole story when he was talking about the faith of his grandmother and his mother, but they had to go through some kind of life experiences. And what's really interesting, they went through some experiences because Timothy's father was not a believer. Timothy's father was not a believer. Now, I'm not going into if he had bad characteristics. That's not what we're talking about right now. We're talking about that she had to keep believing and yet encourage her son in the way of the Lord, even though his father didn't believe. And in life, you might be the only one who is trusting God in whatever situation you're in. But the truth is, are you going to stand on what God told you, and are you going to continue to believe what God told you, or are you going to follow along with those who don't believe or trust? And the small secret is, they really might not tell you, but they're hoping that you don't give up. They're watching you. They're watching everything you say. They're watching everything you do. But the minute you give up, the first thing they're going to say is, I thought God said. I thought God told you that you was going to accomplish A, B, C, and D. So that's why you have to continue in the fight. Because there is, and I tell you what, when you do give up and they start talking, it discourages you even more. It discourages you even more. Because then, if you're really not strong, you start to doubt yourself. You start to mistrust. You start not to believe that God ever told you the original promise. And what's really interesting is, I'm going to also talk to you about Abraham and Sarah. In this talking about, and I want to go back because, of course, we're talking about the movie Gifted, but in that, we're also saying you were built for it. And what is it? The weight. You was built for it because Timothy was encouraged because of what he had experienced in life. He saw his grandmother wait. He saw his mother wait. And now he knows that God has promised and that he can stand on the faith. But in standing and in waiting on the promise, you have to know that there is a wait period. Now, with this wait period, we get distracted. And to talk about the movie, just to get it so you understand, the grandmother was a mathematician. Evelyn was a mathematician. Diane, which was her daughter, was also a mathematician. But I told you Diane died. She killed herself. But the mother thought that this problem was never solved. Her whole mission was to get Diane's name on this wall with this plaque, with the equation, because she was going to go down in history books and they was going to travel. And it wasn't so much of the money, but it was that her daughter was going to be declared great among people. And so she got really, really, really caught up in the point that this problem was never solved. But at the end of the movie, after everything was done, come to find out the problem had been solved. Her daughter had it published, binded, everything was printed out, all the equations, but she had given her brother Frank some instructions to not publish this information until her mother died. Because they had such a bad relationship that she didn't want her mother to gloat and to get any glory, so to speak, from raising this child prodigy. But I said all that to say, because if the mother just would have waited and just not been anxious and built up so much to see her gift be lifted up, and that's where we get distracted. We want our gift to be highlighted amongst men. We want you to know who we are, what we do, and why we do it so well. Be it natural or spiritual. Everybody wants to be known. And it's really bad now because social media makes it even worse. Because I remember a time if you were on the news, you mattered. If your voice was heard amongst the nation or nations, you were deemed a valuable person. Social media has knocked that all out of the box. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody has something to say. And half the time it's not backed up by any facts. It's just, I'm emotional right now. I am really emotional. And you dare not tell somebody, please get your emotions off. Because then this is mine and I say what I want to say. But then you're mad because I think what I think about you. Now, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. We're not getting into judgment. I'm just telling you how to help yourself. Keep your emotions off the internet, please. Please. And I did a little sidetrack, but remember that. But so she wanted to be very, very, very important. And she wanted this, to be highlighted, and she wanted her daughter to be known. So before she knew that it was published, her intent was to raise her granddaughter in the way that she would be able to solve this problem. Because Mary asked Evelyn, could my name be up here one day? She said, it could be if you worked very, very hard. So that was her whole mission, was to get this, this problem up and to know that my daughter did it and we come from a lineage of mathematicians and all this. But if you want to talk about waiting, on the gift, and the gifted, we're going to talk about Abraham and Sarah. And if you go and you read in Genesis chapter 15, verse 4, this is when the promise is originally made, that the Lord, what the Lord was going to do, and that he was going to grant Abraham and Sarah a child, even though they were old. But what was interesting, if you keep reading, the promise doesn't come until chapter 21. Now, that's a lot of time and space for different things to occur in the middle from 15 to 21. And what's really interesting is that, of course, because he got tired of waiting, and Sarah, she encouraged him to go sleep with Hagar, and that's where Ishmael comes from. Now, the promise was that he would have a son, but they would have a son, not Abraham and another woman. It was Abraham and Sarah. So even then, life goes on, and the Lord didn't punish, the Lord didn't punish him. He granted that he said he would still bless Ishmael, but the promise was between him and Sarah. But what's really interesting is that he got in another situation and he messed up yet again. Because before 21, he had a situation with Abimelech. And he told Abimelech that this is his sister. So, and what I thought was interesting was they was old. So Sarah was still fine that Abimelech was trying to wife this woman that technically couldn't do anything for him as far as birthing any more children. But she must have been pretty because he had to have her. But the Lord spoke, and he realized, the Lord spoke that is Abraham's wife. So they moved on. But what's interesting is Abraham knew the promise that the Lord gave him and Sarah. So why would he not stand up and say, and he tried to justify it and go through the lineage and say, but when you really get down to it, she is my sister. Now, that wasn't important when you was crying unto the Lord that you did not have a seed and the Lord granted you a seed. That being your sister was not in the equation. What are you saying, Smith? You wanted to be married. You had to be married. And it wasn't that you just had to be married. You had to be married to him or her. This is the one. Mind you, their lineage at the time was not important. Where they came from, what they did for a living was not important because you was in love and that was God sent and that was the miracle of heaven. Now, yes, he told you he was going to marry, he told you was going to be married. Now, the issue is he didn't say when and he didn't tell you who. I know some of you got this whole page written out in your journal, what they're going to look like when they walk down the aisle and all. Yeah, okay, all right. Trust God. You trust him. Trust him. But please don't cry when what you wanted it to be is not what it is, but it is what God told you it was going to be. Because in life, we make up what we say God is going to do because we have the picture painted in a perfect way. Because nobody likes trial and tribulation. Nobody really likes tests. I don't care how much you study. You can study and be the greatest student there is, but when you sit down, you have anxiety. Because the greatest fear is, what if everything I studied is not on this test? And that is how we live life. Because, Lord, I want it just like this. I want it just like this. And it is coming totally opposite. Why? Because you're not the creator. Why? Because we don't have a complete understanding. Why? Because we didn't write the beginning or the end. And if you had the opportunity to, I told you we would all be great. Nobody would struggle, and I'm not going to say we would all be great because some of you would deem hell on other people. Yes, you would. You would because you do it now. What you talking about? Because you're rude. You don't speak. We say hello and you look the other way. And I ain't talking about in the grocery store. I'm talking about right here. I'm not talking about in public. Or you have your family, you the one that the family do not want at none of the meetings. You the one that when you walk in the barbecue, it's kind of like, oh. Everybody remember to smile hard, smile nice, because you're the pop-off. You the one, I say what I want, when how I want, where I want. Yeah, you that one. So I'm saying, don't be that, and let's get back to waiting. Because when Abraham decided that he was not going to tell the truth, it kind of put a wrench in the situation. Because say that God spoke to Abimelech and Abimelech didn't listen. Who have you held up because you were lying? Who have you held up because you was not willing to wait on the promise, the gift that the Lord had told you that he was going to give you, but you saw, or when he gave you the promise, you made it up in your mind how it was going to go, so you decided you was going to rush the gift to come. Or you decided that you was going to rush or determine how soon it should happen. Now, I told you it came in 15, the promise, but it did not manifest into 21. Again, that is a lot of time and space. And really, as we read the Bible, we're not getting a full timeline. So you really don't know how often the test came, if it came back to back, if it was a 6-month period, if I felt good for 6 months and then something else showed up, or if as soon as I got over it, it came the next day. Guess what? It really doesn't matter. Because all we're talking about is waiting and knowing that you've been built. If God gave you a promise, he put everything in you at that point to wait for the promise to come. He did not give you a promise and say that I just decided to tell you that. I just decided to tell you that to make you feel good. I just decided to tell you that because you wasn't smiling today. You know how we do when we tell people they look nice, but you really don't think they look nice. I'm sorry. We just truthful. You just force a compliment. Oh, it's good to see you smile. And then you turn around like, oh. The Lord don't do that. That is not what he does. He does not sit there and think about what is going to get you up for the day. And why what's going to make you. He doesn't manipulate. We do. And it's out of ignorance. That's what's crazy. Again, because we have no control. But we feel like we can manipulate the Lord to work in our favor real fast. What you mean? Ooh, we fasting for 40 days. You gonna join me? What happens when your 40 days come and you still broke? What happens when your 40 days come and your health is bad? What you gonna do? Are you going to say God ain't real? He didn't tell you if you go on a 40-day fast. He said, I'm going to heal you. So if you're going to call a solemn assembly, as we say, you know us deep saints, don't call me. I'm not on social media. If you knock on my door, you might not see my blinds open. I'm seeking the Lord. Well, seek him. Seek him and be ready for what he tell you when you're seeking him. Be ready for if he tell you, you're playing with me. Be ready for if he tell you, no, not yet. God is real. He speaks very plain. There's nothing weird. There's not a ghost going to come through your door and it's not going to happen. He's just going to speak to you. Now, the issue is, are you going to hear him and are you going to listen? Are you going to believe that he is going to accomplish everything that he said that he would accomplish in your life? Yes, the waiting period is difficult. Yes, you may cry. Yes, you may get upset. Yes, you may even doubt at times. But pull yourself together and know that God loves you. Pull yourself together and learn how to tell the devil you are a liar. I will not be distracted with the lie. I will not stay in this place. I will not mess up because I want it to happen now. And it's just that simple. We really just have an issue with time. And my generation is a little bit on the cusp of the change because Miss Bridget, they wasn't in the microwave situation. They couldn't do the microwave, so they had to wait. They might knew a trick. If you wrap it in foil, it might heat up faster or whatever, but you had to use the oven. And the children after me are even worse. Because not only do they know the microwave, they don't know work ethic. And it's not that we did it, how can I say, we did it by, trying to be harmful intentionally. We just, as we say, we want our kids to have what we didn't have, or we don't want them to experience what we experienced. So we have created little monsters. Somebody said big monsters. And all of that can be fixed. All of that can be, it's called patience. It's called just patience. It's called when they ask, say no. Now, as old as I am, I do throw silent tantrums. And what I mean by that is we do it to God all the time. Especially when we feel worthy of what we've asked for. You've determined that God can't tell you no. Why? Because I've been at everything. I've worked hard. I pay my tithes and offering. Ooh, when they ask me, I'm there. Oh, whatever they want me to do, I do it. Now, if you've done it with a sincere heart, sometimes no. Because again, I said we're natural manipulators. And what are you saying? Because we do things with the intention that if I do this, God will do that. Now, if God made you a promise, do not think that you doing everything that you deem that is acceptable in the sight of the Lord, that it's going to happen sooner than what he wants it to happen. Why? Because when God gives us things too soon, I'm not going to say when God gives us things. When things happen sooner than what we're prepared for, most of the time, it leaves in the wind. It leaves in the wind. What are you saying? Like I told you, those of you who wanted to be married and had to be married, when that gets old, what do? You start complaining. And some of you don't wait 6 weeks before you come back. Well, I should have thought about something else. Lord, was he the one? You said he was. You said she was. So you tell me. Maybe that's why I'm not the Lord, because that's how I would talk to people. But I'm saying, please, in all that you do, in all that you are, know that you were built for the promise. Know that God is going to accomplish it. Know that God has every intention. Now, with Abraham and Sarah, he did tell him that they would have a son, but then he gave promises how great they would be in many nations. Now, was Abraham supposed to see that? No. He saw part of it. He saw the beginning of the promise. He saw that his son Isaac was birthed. Now, it's for you to continue to trust. I said that to say because Evelyn knew that her daughter was great, but she didn't know where the math had went. She didn't know where the problem had went, so she was determined to make it happen. When the problem had already been solved and the Lord was going on, well, I don't want to say the Lord, but the generation was going on to continue to be great. So we have to learn how to be satisfied with what God wants us to see. It's not for you to see that your grandson is going to go off and be a great baseball sports player. If he told you that and you got to see it birth, him or her birth into this world, trust and believe and nurture that child that they may go on. And if God gave you a promise, nurture that promise or build yourself to where that promise can excel. It's not for you to be, if you never see $1 million, but the Lord told you your family was going to be great and prosperous, why haven't you raised your son or your daughter to go to college or to have a trade and to believe and build up and learn and expand, build their minds that they may be great? We get stingy. We want it all. We want it and we got to have it immediately. And the point for you trusting and knowing is that you have to continue to walk in that and continue to have faith that you are on the path and doing what God has told you to do. We're waiting for people to build us up and give us so many accolades, and people that give you accolades can take them. They can take them, and so many times, once they give it to you, that doesn't mean they love you or they really appreciated what you did. So don't get caught up in that. Don't get caught up in looking for the fame and looking for the applause of men. Look for the applaud of the Father. Look for God to be able to say, "Well done, thy good and faithful servant." Know what it is to be faithful. I was reading and it really caught me. Faith is action. Faith is you're doing, you're being, you're in a state. That is a place where you stay. So when you say the Lord has counted, if you're able to say the Lord has counted me faithful, know what that means. Know that means that I'm broke, but I am walking in the way of where the Lord told me to go. If the Lord said I'm gifted, then I am going to enhance whatever area that is. If the Lord was to say I was going to be a great keyboard player, I can't just play at church. I have to go home. I have to practice. I have to listen to music. I have to do whatever it takes. Those of you who sing, learn how to read. Learn how to do, and my father told me, as kids you don't listen, but hey. So my father told me when I was growing up, you know, people who sing, when they learn to read, they get paid more money. I didn't understand that. In the school I went to, the kids were not reading music. So as I got older and I went to college, and I started to notice some of my friends who couldn't sing but they could read were getting paid. Some of the people, the greatest musicians, if they cannot read music, people do not have time for you. And why is that? Because if you can read music, I can give you this song and you can go over it and you can read it and we got it down packed. But if you know everything by ear, that means you're making up notes and harmonies and rhythms that sound good to you, but that's not what I wrote and that's not what I want you to sing. So that's what I'm talking about. In life, you have to learn and do whatever it is to make you great in the area that you are gifted in. If it's a mathematician, know all there is to know. Go to conferences. Do whatever. Do whatever to excel in that area so that you can be great. And don't do it in the sense of that God is going to do it for you right now. He might want you to be great in that area so you can build up the rest of the generations coming after you so they can continue to build on something. So that is all I am talking to you about today. I'm not going to holler. I'm not rolling around in the floor. I'm already a little short of breath, so I won't be rolling. But I want to encourage you all, just all that I can, to know to be great in whatever area God has called you to. When you are on that path and God has gifted you with great things and promises and told you, please believe him. Please believe him. Quit looking like what you're going through. Quit determining, letting your outside factors mean something. Please. If you do hair and the Lord told you was going to be great and, have beauty supply and all these kinds of things and travel the world, please look like it. And I'm talking about every area. If you're an athlete and the Lord told you was going to be great, look like it. What it look like me looking like I look right now standing before you. Talking about the Lord said I was going to be a great baseball player. And I just told you I was a little out of breath. What does that look like? Please do whatever needs to be done in whatever area you are gifted in to be great. And don't look for the applause of people. Do it because you are trusting that God believes in you. Do it because you are trusting that God will never fail you and he does not give empty promises. He is not the Son of Man that he should lie. He don't have to. He do not have to. So please believe him. Please trust him. Please stand on the Almighty's word. Please dream about the promise. Please walk in the promise. If nobody around you believe it, look like it anyway. Look like it anyway. Believe it. Trust him. Stand on it.